Magneto is among some of the strongest heroes in Marvel Champions. Let's take a look at his hero kit and see what makes him so good. To begin, his alter ego, Eric Lyncher, has a hand size of 6, hit points of 10, and a recovery of 3, which is okay, except for the fact that when you get his Asteroid M support, which is a 2-cost support, that when you exhaust it, heals him for 1 and gets to shuffle his topmost magnetic card from his discard pile into his deck, his recovery becomes even better. On top of that, you get to include that when you flip down into Alter Ego, Eric Lyncher allows you to shuffle the top 3 cards of his discard pile into his deck. So now you're able to shuffle a ton of cards into your deck. But why does that matter so much for Magneto? Well, when he flips up to his hero form, he has a 2/2/2 stat line, which is fine, and a hand size of 5, pretty standard. But his ability here allows you to discard cards from the top of his deck until he hits a magnetic card. Then you get to add that card to your hand. So now at this point, he has a hand size of 7 from Alter Ego flipping into Hero, or a hand size of 6 in Hero altogether, which is already really good. And not to mention that every single one of his hero cards has a magnetic trait. So as you're discarding cards from the top of your deck, you're likely to hit one of these cards in his hero kit. So what's next? What else makes Magneto so powerful? Well, on top of a 2/2/2 stat line, he has Magneto's armor. We'll get back to the helmet here in just a second. But with Magneto's armor, as you have it out on the table and you discard cards from the top of your deck until you get a magnetic card, every time you discard a card, check and see what resource type it has. If it has a mental resource, you get a +1 to your thwart, a physical is a +1 to your attack, and an energy is a +1 to your defense. So now Magneto has the opportunity to become a 3/3/3. Now, sadly, if you discard a bunch of cards from the top of your deck and they're all, say, of the same resource type, you don't get more than +1. But still, a 3/3/3 is really strong. Now, what else makes Magneto super, super good? Well, aside from getting buffed to your stats for discarding, you get your cape. Your cape gives you the aerial trait and readies you once you use your magnetic pull ability. So that's really good because you can thwart for 2 off a scheme and then attack for maybe 3 if you have the armor out, or you could thwart for a total of 5 just with basic activations. And at that point, you've not spent anything from your hand. But something else that can make Magneto even better is his helmet. Now, at a glance, and the way I played it in the games, because I completely forgot about this other thing, is Magneto's helmet is a 3-cost resource generator for magnetic cards. So it's not nearly as good as the X-Jet. So why would you play this over the X-Jet? And that is because of this one line of text right here. Magneto gains steady. So now it takes 2 status cards for Magneto to become stunned or confused. So now you're not using your first activation in your turn to clear a status card because there's no need. Unless you have 2 status cards on you, you don't need to activate in order to clear those cards. Now, Magneto's helmet makes Magneto practically impervious to status conditions. And even if you did get a status condition, you most likely will get a second ready in your turn that it's not really going to matter much. And then, if you're worried about taking damage, just pop this on the table. Magneto gains Retaliate 1, and he can take up to 6 damage. Now, I say up to 6 damage, there's a qualifying statement here. He can take up to 6 damage and retaliate against the enemy. Now, if he has 6 damage or more dealt to him, Magneto's bubble pops, and he no longer has retaliate. But if he takes more than 6 damage, all of it gets soaked up into his bubble. So you really could take a few small hits from minions, maybe defend a few attacks from villains, and you're not really going to have to worry too much about this popping for a couple of turns. And again, if you're worried about Magneto taking any kind of damage, just go ahead and throw the metal shards out there too. With metal shards, it's his attack event. 3 cost, which is relatively expensive, but would be fairly easy to pay for with Magneto, as I talk about some auto includes in his deck. But once you deal 7 damage to an enemy, the 3 for 7, it's not great. A 3 for 7, but you get a tough status card if that defeats him. So you throw it out against a minion, and now you're paying 3 for a tough, which really isn't that bad considering there are a few cards out there that are 3 for just a tough. And this way you're clearing a minion. And talking about minions for Magneto, some interesting cards in his kit. You have Wrapped in Metal here. Wrapped in Metal allows you to make a non-elite minion not be able to activate. And what's even better is that it completely blanks their text box, including keywords. So if a minion has, say, guard or patrol, it's not a problem. You can just throw Wrapped in Metal on them, and it's almost like they're not there. But what's even better about that is you now have this one cost event that allows you to just completely delete that minion, discard them from the game, and then deal 5 damage to another enemy and stun them. So if you got a strong minion out there that has high health, you can either delete them with this combo, or you can throw another minion at them, stunning them as well. It's sort of a win-win scenario. It's great. Now there are 4 other cards in Magneto's kit, which is Electromagnetic Blast and his Master of Magnetism. The Electromagnetic Blast is his thwart event, which is also super good. It allows you to remove 3 threat from a scheme, and if you remove the last of the threat from the scheme with this card, then you get to remove an attachment that has the hero action or hero response. That's actually really, really nice. But then on top of that, if you're having trouble paying for the stuff in your kit, you've got Master of Magnetism. Master of Magnetism is a 2 resource, dual resource generator that has the mental and energy resources on it. Can be really, really good. So his kit, it's great. It can be kind of expensive at times when you're looking at the helmet and the bubble and maybe metal shards, but you're able to pay for it with pretty much anything in your hand. Now, I say he has 2 resource cards, but a lot of the time it's almost like he has 6. And the reason I say that is because Master of Magnetism, Wrapped in Metal, and Magnetic Missile, if you have all those in your hand and there are no non-elite minions in play, it's just resources. There's nothing you can do. And that's happens quite a lot with Magneto, especially if you're using the magnetic pool, because you're going to end up pulling one of these 6 cards into your hand almost more likely than you are going to pull any of the other cards into your hand. So as soon as you can, try and get Magneto's armor, his helmet, and his cape onto the table, and Magneto is pretty much unstoppable. Now, what are some cards that I might auto include in a Magneto deck? Well, I would include cards like Def Focus, X Gene, X Jet, and Utopia in every deck. And the reason for that is because X Gene can help pay for things like metal shards or even magnetic missile. Okay, that's great. And then if you have Def Focus on the table, you're paying for any card that has a superpower trait. So that's the bubble, that's the metal shards, that's the electromagnetic blast, or the magnetic missile. So if you have Def Focus, magnetic helmet, Magneto's helmet, and either X Jet or X Gene on the table, you don't have to discard any cards from your hand to be able to pay for anything from this kit right here. So that's really, really good for Magneto. The only thing I wish is that Magneto had the magnetic trait, because then I could use team building exercise to be able to pay for anything in here. But I guess that would be a little too powerful. Now you can understand why I would include the 3 resource generators, Def Focus, X Gene, and X Jet. But Utopia, why would I do that? Now, Utopia allows an X-Men to have an extra ally, but it also is a source of another ready for X-Men. So now Magneto, with a 2/2/2 stat line that can get buffed to a 3/3/3 stat line, can now activate for 2, then 3, and with Utopia on the table, can activate for another 3 again. That's a little insane. You're hitting for 8 if you use all of it in attack, with a minimum of 6. That's fantastic. I don't know many villains that are going to be able to stand up to you for very long. And the other thing with that, you might want to go ahead and include Professor X in here. He's sort of an auto include in most of my X-Men decks anyway, but you could get a lot of readies with that too. So now you have Magneto's Cape, Utopia, and Professor X. If you throw in a triage, you got triage triggering Utopia and Professor X triggering another ready for Magneto. That's like a one-turn kill right there. It's a little insane. So that's what I would auto include in Magneto's decks with the basic cards. Let's talk a little bit about his aspects and what he might be good in. starting with his weakest aspect, working to his best. Now, keep in mind, I did play this all in true solo. So anything that I say really only factors into that. I didn't really think too much about multiplayer, but it could probably still stand because Magneto is such a great all rounder. He could probably excel in any aspect you choose. Now, with that being said, I feel like his weakest aspect is aggression. Now, I say that, but there's an asterisk there because when I built the deck for him, I I think I was a little too sold on Hone Technique as the best aggression card, when really it works for certain heroes better than Magneto. And the main reason for that is it's going to be kind of hard to hit Hone Technique and get it on the table with Magneto unless you draw it in your opening hand. I say that because of the magnetic pool. Hone Technique is not a magnetic traded card, and it is most likely going to get discarded before you draw it. So you're either not going to be triggering his magnetic pool, which is arguably a very powerful thing for Magneto, probably even better than Hone Technique, or you're just going to discard Hone Technique. That's that's not great. Now, if you're lucky enough to get Hone Technique on the table, you can trigger all of the powerful aggression cards. You can use Dive Bomb, which will delete an entire field, or you can just straight up use full body charge. Dropkick gets powerful as well, so it gets crazy with Hone Technique and Magneto, but you have to get it on the table, and that can be kind of difficult. Now, one thing that I might change about Magneto and Aggression is I would probably switch up the cards that I included. I might not include Hone Technique. I might put more cards like Godslayer or Yarnbjorn in there. I think those would be really great cards for Magneto because then you can just buff up what you're doing with his attack, his basic activation. You're already getting a lot of activations with his cape. You include Utopia, you throw Godslayer in there, you throw Yarnbjorn, and maybe a Martial Prowess to be able to trigger that Yarnbjorn without having to spend anything from your hand. And Magneto is going to be a solid hitter. So the next aspect that I want to talk about now for Magneto is Justice. And he's really good in Justice. Only slightly better than Aggression, though. And I say that because he already has quite a bit of threat removal in his kit. So you're not really having to worry about including a lot more of that. So you can build him with a float like a butterfly build and not worry too much about including another thwart event or not. You might want to include a couple because he only has two in his kit. But again, you have the ready so you can use his basic activations for the thwart. Now, float like a butterfly would be really good. It has the same problem that Hone Technique does. You end up discarding it unless you include an extra couple of copies. But there's another thing that Float Like a Butterfly has that Hone Technique doesn't. That kind of makes Float Like a Butterfly a little worse. And that is that you have to stuff your deck with confuse cards. Magneto doesn't have any confuse in his kit. And so you're going to have to play Professor X for the confuse. You're going to have to include allies like Dazzler, which is fine, but you're going to really have to stuff his kit with confuse cards. That's not too bad. I mean, confuse is a great mechanic, but you got to make sure that you hit that float like a butterfly to really make them worth it. So I feel like Magneto is better slightly in Justice than Aggression just because his kit backs up the damage that he needs. And adding in thwart removal it's just the schemes stay clear. It's crazy how clear they can stay. You just have to be careful when you flip down, and that's a different story for a different time. Now, one of my favorite builds for Magneto is a protection build with repurpose. Now, I am actually putting protection just a little bit lower than leadership, but quite a bit higher than justice and aggression. Now, that's not to say that justice and aggression are not good for Magneto. You can play Magneto in justice and aggression and be very content with that. But I feel like protection with a repurposed build for Magneto sort of adds bonus to what Magneto is already doing. With Magneto, you can have a force field generator on the table, his magnetic bubble, and a tough status card all at once. There's no chance that you're going to take any amount of damage at any point from that. It's it's insane. Then on top of that, you have a repurpose, and you just go ahead and repurpose that force field generator. Now, if you do it in this order, you exhaust, say, to defend during the villain phase. You repurpose that force field generator, so you get to ready. You throw that on, say, your attack. So now Magneto has a 5 attack. He attacks for 5. Then you magnetic pull, and you get another physical resource. He's going to attack for 6. That is 11 damage in one turn with just those 2 activations. You throw Utopia on the table or Professor X, and you're getting another 6 damage out of Magneto for that. Now, say you didn't defend. So now you attack for 2. Then you attack for 6. Then you attack for 5. Then you attack for 6. And that's just with Magneto's cape. The readies are endless with Magneto. It is insane how good he can be with that. And because of Magneto's bubble and the force field generator and the tough status cards that you can get from metal shards, Magneto is prime for a perfect protection deck also, at the same time as he's running repurpose. You can have your hard to ignores, your unflappable. You can throw in a couple of desperate defenses just to make sure Magneto's ready to get that extra activation during his phase. And things are just going to go crazy for Magneto. The threat is not going to be able to go up with the hard to ignores. It's just insane. Insane how good he can be with that repurpose build. Now, for the final aspect, leadership. And the reason why I think Magneto is best in leadership, even though the repurpose is really, really good with him in protection, is the fact that the magnetic pool can get rid of those tech upgrades and the repurpose more often than you want it to. You're still going to hit them because there's going to be multiple copies of everything that you want in your deck. So that's fine with protection. But in leadership, it's already it's increasing what Magneto is already good at. And that's being an all-rounder. Magneto can damage, attack, defend, and leadership just makes that better. You have allies that can defend for you, or you can throw your allies out on the field. You can get them to ready you with Utopia. You have ways to keep your allies around longer. And that's not that's without using the med team from protection. With using things like teamwork, you're getting an added benefit to Magneto's activation, and you're getting to keep that ally around a lot longer. It's insane what Magneto can do in leadership. You could do a mass attack if you wanted to as well, but I feel like what's best is teamwork. You can use those sacrificing your ally cards. You use them a couple of times and then throw them away. Add that benefit to what you want. It can be really good. Rapid response just brings them back. Magneto is just a ball in leadership. So those are my thoughts on Magneto, and I hope that you feel like you may have learned something. I know that when I played through, I always forgot about steady. So this is your reminder that Magneto's helmet gives you steady. Oh, and the bubble gives you retaliate 1. I also tend to forget about that one. But let me know what you guys think of Magneto down in the comments below. What aspect do you think he's best in? What tier do you think he is of hero? Speaking of that, my personal opinion, definitely not professional, but personal, is that Magneto is either a high A tier or low S tier hero. I think he can really do some strong performance. He may not be able to outperform Spider-Ham or Doctor Strange, but he's definitely up there. He may be able to outperform them. I've played him more than I've played either of them. He's a lot of fun. Again, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and if there's anything that I missed or forgot, feel free to let me know. We'll see you in the next one, guys.